Welcome to Breaking the Cycle, where we get deep into the patterns that keep us stuck and discover the tools to break free. Whether it's binge eating, emotional eating, struggles, self-doubt, we're here to explore the root causes, challenge the status quo, and pave the way for lasting transformation. I'm Natasha D'Souza, your host, coach, and guide, and I'm here to help you take back control and create a life that truly reflects your worth. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Breaking the Cycle. Today we have with us Dr. Phyllis, and we're going to be going through every single thing about genetics and weight loss. Of course, starting with her personal story as well, which I think adds such a personal touch. When someone's not only just talking about weight loss, but actually been through the journey, it's a whole different experience. So we're going to get started because we have a lot to cover. Hi, Dr. Phyllis.
Hi,
Thank you. Thank you for joining us today, all the way from
Toronto.
All the way from Toronto. Love that. How was your trip here?
It has been incredible. I was just saying to my husband, I want to move to Dubai. But really just the essence of being able to be outdoors, enjoy the sun, all of those things that feed my dopamine.
Yeah, that's absolutely amazing. Well, thank you for joining us today. There's so much I want to get into it with you. But first, before we begin, talk to us a little bit about what this aspect of genetics and weight loss means for you.
Oh my goodness. It means everything because I was an overweight physician, and that is something that I held so much shame about. And I know a lot of my clients hold shame when it comes to weight and weight loss and weight gain, but I was also a mother. I wanted to show a healthy lifestyle. And then of course, in my role as a physician, I was doing all of the things. I was, exercising morning and night. I was trying to restrictive eat, but then that would cause me to binge eat because kind of how that cycle goes. And it wasn't until I was able to unlock my genetics and see that things like over-exercising was spiking my cortisol. The fact that I do have issues with dopamine. So that would cause me to overeat to get that dopamine sensation. So in my book, Lean Genes, I do talk about all the different genetic avatars, and being able to understand my genetic avatar has helped me create Gene Lean 360. And by doing that, I'm able to put women into these 12 different categories, which I call genetic avatars, and it's really transformed their lives, and it's transformed my life. Just understanding myself, I can be on an amazing vacation like in Dubai, eat whatever I want, know how I can keep the weight off, and not have to be so preoccupied about some people taking medications or some people doing things like restrictive dieting. That's never been the case for me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So intriguing in a part that you said there. You said issues with dopamine. If we can just dive into that a little bit further, please,
100%.
as in how it impacted you, because that's really big right now, right? And people always look at the positive aspect of things. Oh, like, get your dopamine in, get your sunlight in, be grateful. But they don't look at the negative aspects of what people crave. And you said that issue, and I think it's so important to touch base on. If you could just talk a little bit about that, please.
So I call women that have issues with dopamine receptors, or your DRD2 gene. That would be, I would call you a dopamine-driven genetic avatar. And so this means that you might crave certain foods not because you're hungry for them or because you need them. Some people do have cravings because they're nutrient deficient, for example. So some people might crave chocolate, but they're magnesium deficient. But if you're dopamine driven, you are craving it sometimes out of boredom. You're having issues with dopamine regulation. So when we target the dopamine, for example, going a little bit upstream of the dopamine by giving you things like tyrosine, then that actually takes away the craving. And that actually really helps you, because a lot of women feel, I'm a failure. I couldn't stick to this diet. I would start a diet on Monday and then by Tuesday fail the diet, right? And then I would eat all the food and then try to restart the diet again next Monday. And so it was just this cycle of gaining and gaining because I wasn't really getting to that root cause of dealing with this issue of dopamine, and understanding that, like, yes, it's great when you are a mom and a doctor and doing all of these different things when you might have something like ADD, but when it comes to sticking to a diet or dealing with cravings, you really do want to get to the root cause of that dopamine issue and deal with it.
Absolutely. So does this boil down to then supplements? Because you see so much hate with supplements in the market. Take this, don't take that. And as you know, we were just talking about social media previously. The market is so saturated, right? So does this boil down to then supplements? And where does an individual start? So if we have a mom listening to this right now and she's like, well, what do I need then as far as my supplementation goes and all these cravings that I have? Where would a woman even start?
Start with a genetic test. That's what I would definitely say. And not only getting a genetic test, but working with someone that can help you interpret the genetic test. Because if not, it really is, if you look at a genetic test, all of the genes in your body, the blueprint of you, the story of you. So working with someone that can now interpret this into a plan of action for you to say, okay, there's so many different supplements you can take. I call it a spray and pray mentality, right? When you're just hoping for the best. But if you're able to know what are the best supplements for you, targeted supplementation is what I reference it to in the book, then you're able to know what you're taking based upon that specific genetic avatar.
Yeah.
So starting with the genetic test, work with someone that can help interpret for you, and then know where your genetic avatar is. And then based upon that, there's specific protocols that I've laid out for all the 12 different avatars.
Yeah, that's lovely. I mean,
Yeah.
targeted supplementation, I've taken my fair share of bad supplements. I think I tried something, blue spirulina, that tasted like absolute sewage. It was so horrible.
Such a bad taste.
And then I spoke to my doctor, and
Yeah.
he's like, you don't even need to take that,
No.
Nasia. Why are you taking that? I'm like, I don't know. I thought it was. But yeah, I think everyone out there has taken something because they've heard about it
100%.
or they thought it would benefit them.
Right.
On that note, you said there were genetic avatars, and I want people obviously to go through all 12 of them in your
Yeah.
book, but if you can cover some of the prominent ones that people can kind of relate to or find themselves in, let's say.
Yes. Oh my goodness. So I would say the top ones would have to be inflammatory overload is one I see very commonly because a lot of our foods can cause inflammation. We see inflammation sometimes in women that have things like fibroids. So I'll go through a medical history and someone will say, oh, I don't have any medical history. Oh, but I do have a bit of heavy periods or I have fibroids. That's inflammation. That is inflammation brewing in your body. That is actually a disease process. And so what is causing that inflammation? So I know we hear this word a lot, but let's talk about what inflammation is. So acute inflammation is if you were to cut yourself and then your body goes and heals up that cut, that is an acute inflammatory process. Now, chronic inflammation is when there's a chronic assault to your body. So for example, it might be something that you're eating that you don't realize. It might be nutrient deficiency. So you don't have certain nutrients. And so your body is fighting to work and to have a normal metabolic process, but it's missing the necessary nutrients to do so. So that can put you in an inflammatory state. Another thing that I'm seeing really commonly is histamine overload or histamine intolerance. And so some women will say, oh, I don't feel great when I drink alcohol. That's usually a histamine intolerance because alcohol is high in histamine. So just knowing that gives you the awareness to say, well, if I do have alcohol, maybe I'll take we have a product called Histasis. So that will maybe help you with a breakdown of histamine. Or I won't eat some of these foods that are inflammatory triggers for me, or I'll have an anti-inflammatory diet. So that is just that knowledge to just say, duh, like why didn't I just do that before? Another genetic avatar is cortisol captives. So cortisol is a huge buzzword now. Everyone's wanting to check their cortisol, but it's very important to have an understanding about your cortisol levels because it influences even how you exercise. So you might be thinking, I just need to exercise more. And you're putting yourself in this high cortisol state. And another thing, fasting. So if you're someone who's a cortisol captive and you are trying to fast, it's really you might lose 10 pounds and you'll get stuck. And then the weight will start creeping back on. And you won't know why, but if you know that you're a cortisol captive, you're going to know the right supplements to take. I know ashwagandha is a great one for some people, magnesium, but what we do is a stack for you based upon your cortisol levels. And that really helps for you to start losing weight almost effortlessly because you're doing what your body needs and wants.
That's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
So this sounds like the genetic testing sounds much, much deeper than your basic blood work that you would do with your
100%.
doctor that they just kind of tick you off from. It sounds like the next level to really understand your internal organs.
Yeah.
So on that testing, what are some of the key performance indicators, let's say you look at to see, oh, this individual, that's probably why this individual is not losing weight or struggling with her weight.
Yeah. So, and people are surprised when I send them for genetic testing. They're like, which lab do I go to? Where do I get my blood? I'm like, it's just a cheek swab. There's genes in every single cell in your body.
Yeah.
So it really is whatever information I wanted to get from you, I could get it from your genes. I focus in on the weight loss piece, but there's information that will come up that overlaps with things like dementia. So, for example, if I'm looking at your blood pressure and I'm looking at cholesterol, some of these plaques can form in your brain and can also affect your risk for things like dementia. So I do ask women when they work with me, is it okay if I sneak over into that little piece as well? We are going to talk about preventing dementia. I know you came for me for weight loss, but we might talk about this as well. And it really is, as a physician, I love the opportunity to work with women in preventative medicine outside of just the scale in our clothes and today. Because when I was working in family medicine, I would see women who would be on chronic pain medications for low back pain, need knee replacements. And I would think if I had just seen this woman 20, 30 years ago and we could work on her weight, we wouldn't be dealing with these issues now. And so I really just want us as a society to become more preventative, less reactive, because your genes are not your destiny, they're your strategy. So if we can see genetically where you might be heading for literally every single disease process, like there is genetics that you can look at for what type of antidepressants you can take, what type of blood pressure medication you can take, because it's truly the story of you. So what I'm doing is just paring the information down, because it's so much information, and then putting it into the avatars. So that's the main thing I'm looking at. Which avatar is this person? So usually most people are about 2 or 3 different avatars. And then based on those avatars, we're making a protocol for them. And then one thing that has now coming up is, what do we do about things like cognition, dementia that's coming up? What do we do about anxiety and depression?
Yeah.
So coming up with those protocols is that next phase after they get down to their goal weight.
Oh, that's lovely. Something I want to touch base with, because I know intermittent fasting is a big hot topic, right? And it's sometimes the go-to when it comes to with weight loss. So I'm intermittent fasting.
Yes.
And I put out this reel on social media once, and it was about intermittent fasting. Now, again, I was speaking to binge eaters in specific. I was speaking to emotional eaters, because they use intermittent fasting as an excuse to binge the night before, and it justifies the behavior. And the hate I got, they're like,
I can imagine.
It's like, how can you say people need to eat breakfast?
Yeah.
Breakfast means break fast.
Oh,
That's
gosh.
kind of how they were saying that along the way, which well, I was quite taken aback. I mean, thank you for all the engagement, right, on my
Exactly.
social media. But what is it with intermittent? I love your take on it, and how does it impact women in specific, in a good or bad way?
So in my practice, even before I was doing genetics, I would see how it affected women differently than men. So, for example, if I was treating a married couple, the man would probably lose 40 pounds with intermittent fasting, whereas my female clients would maybe lose about 10 pounds. So hormones play a huge role, and cortisol is a hormone. And so if you are having issues in terms of cortisol regulation, but also if you are leading into perimenopause or menopause, then you really need to look at how you are fasting. And so first we have to look at the definition of fasting. If you're following the rule of eating when the sun is up, when the sun is down, you stop eating, then that's an appropriate way to eat. But if you're missing, for example, your breakfast and you think you're doing a great thing by not eating, and then you come home and you eat this giant, enormous meal right before you go to bed, now you're spiking your cortisol, and now your body cannot relax and you can't get into a fat burning mode, and you do this cycle over and over and over and over again, and you wonder why you're not losing weight. To me, it's so obvious, it's so apparent. You're not eating in the way that you're supposed to be genetically. So first of all, defining what fasting is important. Defining your window. So there is things like the clock gene that can tell you when you should and should not be eating. And then listening to that. So making sure that you're not just doing what everyone else is doing and thinking, well, if I just skip breakfast and eat at night, I'm doing something great. No, not necessarily.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's that whole excuse situation.
Yes.
And should women take on fasting? Is that something that they should take?
It depends on your genetics. Majority of women, no. Majority of women, I would say, the way that I've seen people intermittent fast is they're skipping breakfast and eating at night. If you are going to fast, and if you are of the genetic type where you would benefit from fasting, and that's the genetic avatar sugar shapers, they do well with a little bit of restriction in high processed foods at nighttime. So you don't want to eat, say, a bowl of cereal and go to bed. So if that fasting to you looks like eating a great high protein breakfast and lunch, and then having a lighter dinner, and then you stop eating by 7 o'clock, of course, that would work very well for you.
Yeah.
But otherwise, no, that it doesn't work for majority of women.
Definitely sound like a sugar shaper, I'm going to tell you right now.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, that sounds like me. But another interesting point, I just have so many questions for you as you're speaking, but another interesting point is I seen a story on your Instagram that talked about the importance of sleep, right? And I want to get into the dynamics because this is my year of good sleep. Right. This is my year of nothing is going to come in my way of getting my 7 hours of sleep. So 9:30 magnesium. I make sure my partner takes his magnesium and we're like lights out.
Oh, perfect.
And it's so important because I'm seeing how productive I am in the morning. And coming from an entrepreneurship, it's always hustle.
100%.
I'll sleep when I die. And I said, I'm not doing that anymore.
Good.
I'm not. I really want to focus. But I believe people are not realizing the importance of sleep, specifically to weight loss and cortisol. If you can just help build a picture for them, please, on the triangle of how one connects to the other and how they can benefit from it.
It's so interconnected. And even if I were to break it down in a simple manner, that if you don't get enough sleep, the next day you are almost looking for sugar to wake yourself up. And you're in that Starbucks drive-through line because you're just tired. And so there is women that I do call fatigue fighters. They have issues with their MTHFR gene. This is methylation, and this has to do with how their body processes certain minerals. But it might not even be that. It might not even be a nutrition issue. It's just because you're having such poor sleep. That's causing you to crave foods that will quickly spike your energy and then crash your energy down. So then throughout the entire day, you're kind of just trying to chase this quick high of just staying awake, and you're staying fatigued for the entire day. Yeah. And then when we bring in things like cortisol, you're not allowing your cortisol levels to the normal function of your cortisol. So it's going to be completely disrupted. You're going to be in this state of where you should be burning fat at night. You're actually not getting good sleep because you're having insomnia because your cortisol is so high, you don't have good sleep patterns. And then you run into the next day having not rested, having not burned any fat, and then starting back up again, that whole cycle again, feeling tired, overfed but undernourished, and goes back around again in a circle.
Absolutely. I mean, I was raised in a household where dinner was had really late and we'd go right to bed after, eat and then sleep.
Yeah.
And so we've switched it now. I'm such a grandma. I eat at 6:30.
I love it.
Latest at 7.
So good.
But I feel really good on a heartburn digestion standpoint, which gives me about a few hours before bed. So
Right.
if we can just kind of talk about that, allowing your body to go into that fat burning, almost, you've put in all the work. You're not going to put it into good use if you're having your dinner at, let's say, 10 and you're in bed by 10:15.
It's so
right?
true.
So
Exactly.
if you could show us or tell us the importance of that, please.
Yeah, so sometimes I almost think of it like you're filling up a tank and you can't use the tank the next day. So why wouldn't you fill up that tank earlier in the day when you do need that energy for things that you're doing day by day? And it really is counterintuitive to eat all that food and then go right to bed. The biggest thing about eating that amount of food really is cortisol levels. It really is the fact that you are not allowing your body that time to rest and digest. So the time that your body is supposed to be repairing, getting rid of cancerous cells, even things like getting rid of acid in your stomach so that you're not constantly digesting all this food and having elevated acid levels. And that's when people start to get that reflux when they're going to bed. You're really kind of giving yourself disease processes. And that also will spike anxiety because your cortisol is elevated. Now you're going to sleep. Now you have ruminating thoughts. You're thinking about what that person said earlier in the day. And it's just this huge cycle where you're going against your own biology.
Yeah.
for no real good reason.
Absolutely, absolutely. Just because you want to, because
Yeah.
I think there's a phenomenon where people like to sleep with a heavy stomach.
It's bizarre.
Yeah, it's like, I need to sleep with a heavy
Yeah.
stomach. I'm like, no, it's okay to
Yeah.
not be heavy before you
It's
go to
the
bed.
fear of hunger. And so, I mean, I know you talk about, binge eating, emotional eating, and I had this huge fear of hunger at some point where I saw it come back up again when I was at a conference. And the first day, the food was terrible. And then the next day, I found myself like picking up all these little snacks to like almost like a squirrel. Like, I got to take these snacks because I don't want to be hungry later.
Yeah.
And it was making these really poor decisions, not based on any current hunger that I had, but a fear of like upcoming hunger. And I was sitting beside someone on the plane, and I was trying to understand the timing of like when the meals were coming. Just, I didn't want to feel sick and bloated on the plane. And she's like, I just eat when the food comes because I just don't want to be hungry. And I think it made me realize a lot of us have that fear of just, maybe I'll be hungry later. What have you seen with your clients? What do you think that's about?
Do you know the whole fear of hunger situation? So with my clients, majority of them also struggling with weight, and it's about what if I feel hungry and I don't have access to the right food or
Yeah.
the quantity of food? That's what they're looking for, or the type of food that hits the spot.
Yeah.
Then I'll go hunting and searching for it, and then it will be a binge. And I was like, no, it's a binge because you made it a binge, not because you were hunting for the right nutritious food, right? So we all have these little stories that we tell us, and I do see that. I do see the
Yeah.
fear of
The
hunger.
fear of hunger.
Sometimes I'll speak to clients and they'll say, Natasha, I had to stop over at the drive-through because if I didn't, I would have famished. And I was
Yeah.
like, well,
You wouldn't
is your-
have. There's
yeah.
no
And I was
way.
like, is your sugar low?
Yeah.
Are you struggling with something?
Right.
No. I was like, so then if you're so worried, now again, if you have eaten at 12 and you're anticipating to have dinner only by 7, hunger is normal,
Yeah.
right? Then you need to plan for a better snack. But I always do this test with them. I'd say, if in that moment where you're so hungry and you tell yourself, if I have a banana right now, will that do me good? And your brain says, actually, I'd rather have. I'm like, that's emotional hunger.
Right
That's
there.
you're trying to tell us a different story.
Exactly.
So I completely understand and can relate to another level. And my big question now, which is the real hot topic at the moment, and I'd love to know how you're handling this with clients and in your practice and everything of that sort as well, is GLP-1.
Yeah.
I've seen some amazing benefits, but unfortunately I've also seen some major downfalls, especially for those struggling with binge eating or
Right.
any sort of eating disorder for that matter. What's your take on all of it?
So very similarly, like we've seen it work kind of in the short term is what I'm seeing and what my colleagues are seeing. You need to get to that root cause of your weight loss resistance, point blank period. And it's very difficult to do that when you're using something like a GLP-1 or tirzepatide, which most people would know as Mounjaro, if you are taking a medication that's getting rid of this food noise, because it is kind of cutting away that appetite. But look, women, touch your body and say, I love my body. Your body is keeping you alive. So even these cravings that we get so frustrated with, it's telling you a story. It's telling you there's something going on in your body at a deeply molecular cellular level. So if you're having these intense cravings, like I said, oftentimes it could be a nutrient deficiency. Wouldn't you want to get to that root of nutrition deficiency and get rid of those cravings than to just mask it with a drug? And then you come off that drug and then those cravings come back tenfold. And now you've depleted all your muscle and now you're even more nutrient deficient. And then now instead of gaining back muscle, now you're gaining back fat. And now you're in a worse position than you were than when you started. And so that's what I don't like about these medications is that you do get rid of muscle mass. When we do get into our 40s and beyond, we start losing muscle anyways. And so now being on a medication that might cause you to lose additional muscle, and then when you stop it, you're likely to gain back fat, puts you in a worse position from a metabolic standpoint. So that's what I don't like about these medications. And I also don't like that it doesn't teach you the necessary habits. So our program is genetics plus mindset. It's a huge part of it because we love to self-sabotage. That is something that, for whatever reason, right? Like fear of hunger, fear of discomfort, all of these things. I mean, you're an entrepreneur. The most uncomfortable things have grown and shaped you and made you an incredible woman. And I think that we need to start looking at every aspect of our lives differently. we're in these positions that we're in, especially being so overweight, because we didn't want to be uncomfortable. We didn't want to have to work too hard to find our meals, or work too hard to meal prep, or work too hard to even, I mean, I'm grateful I don't have to hunt and gather, but that's also caused a lot of disease in our culture, because if you were to see an animal that was full of tumors and sick and needed antibiotics, you wouldn't kill and eat that. But now we are, because we're so disconnected from our food source. We're eating just sick animals all the time. We're eating produce that has been farmed days ago, and it's lost all its nutrition by the time it's come to us. We are eating food that's grown in soil that no longer has nutrients. So now we do need targeted supplementation. And so I say all this to say that these Band-Aid approaches that we keep turning to and deferring to will always have a long-term consequence. It's okay, and it is necessary to do the work, because it's always going to get you a better result in the long run.
Yeah. And then is it something you would recommend? So someone that's really high on the obesity spectrum, is it something that you would recommend to them to kickstart their journey?
No.
Not even that.
Not even that. Oh, there's such a great little meme on the internet. I wish I could show it, where it basically shows two people racing, and then one person seems like they're faster because they are picking these pieces in the beginning that look easy, but then as it gets to the end, they can't finish off the race because they left the harder part for the end. We need to realize this is not a sprint. This is your life. This is a lifelong journey. There's no kickstart. Like, this is the next 40, 60 years of your life. So what are you in a hurry for?
Yeah.
We need to get rid of this urgency of like, I gotta just kickstart. Let's do it the right way. And so that this is the last time you ever have to do it.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
you know, and I'm guilty of that 100%. If someone told me it would take me a year to lose 100 pounds, which now looking back is not a lot at all, but in the thick of it, I would have been like, I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
I don't want to do it. I don't want to do something for 1 year, because
Yeah.
we want results now. But I'm so grateful that I took that year to work on that, because my life has never been better. And now I can live a life where I still can enjoy foods and still feel like I don't have to restrict myself, because I took that time to do it properly.
Yeah. I mean, I must say that coming from a doctor, like, to say that you wouldn't even recommend it to someone, that's really big, because the follow-up I want to go into with that is obesity is a disease, you know,
100%.
and this is something that is getting talked about so much. Every other platform, well, we need to take Manjaro, we
Yeah.
need to take Ozempic because I have a disease. And if you had other diseases, you would not ignore it, you know? And what's your take on this whole battle that's kind of going on with obesity being a disease?
Diseases don't need to be treated with pharmaceuticals. That's the main issue, and that's why I'm no longer in traditional medicine. It's because we don't realize the power that we have to heal ourselves, and that's what I love about genetics, because the story's inside of you. The answers are inside of you. So once we understand what's going on with you from a genetic standpoint, then we can target and treat that, but not necessarily with pharmacologics. So even, you know, we were talking about dopamine, getting outside, getting sun, like, we laugh about it, but it's true. Like, that is medicine, and we just downplay it if it doesn't come in a pill bottle.
Yeah.
We need to change that mentality to see how powerful simple things like a 20-minute walk a day. There was a month where I was getting so much media inquiries to comment on walking. Like, so every single media outlet was asking, can you comment on walking, Dr. Phyllis? What do you mean? People need to be told that walking is good for them.
know.
Like, that's the place that we're at. And I really just want to, my whole message is just encouraging women, you have the answers inside of you. And really just, you know, once you do have your genetic report, it's getting back to trusting you and trusting yourself. And if that's what you walk away from my program with, also having lost the weight, but also trusting your body again, you cannot go wrong. And so, yes, it is a disease, but doesn't necessarily need to be treated with a medication.
I love that. I
Yeah.
absolutely. You know, just 5 minutes before you walked in, I was talking to my friend, and she's like, Natasha, do you have to get rid of my car? I know you don't have a car. I was like, get rid of it. I walk everywhere. And I was like, it's the best thing ever. And I'm like, if it ever gets too hot, which it does
Yeah.
here, you can always just catch a taxi over. But it has changed we get so used to, I'll drive there, or I'll go here, or I'll go to the shop
That's
down the
so
street.
good.
So I just literally sent that to her, but it's so true. Walking is so underrated,
So-
even for an anxiety standpoint, or making a big decision and just kind of, letting go to move forward. I think it's just so underrated. So I'm really glad you brought that up. And as far as your weight loss journey goes, we talked about you coming to the other end, but prior to that, what led you to being the weight that you were? What are the things that you missed along the way, being a physician, that probably were getting ignored?
So, grief and stress response, that is something, and I talk about it in my book, and I really had to kind of go back and ask myself that question, like, how did I get to be 100 pounds overweight in the first place? And I lost my brother, and I never dealt with it properly. I mean, even before my wedding, I did this like crazy liquid diet to, fit in the dress and then rapidly gain all the weight back. So it wasn't something that I dealt with permanently until genetic weight loss. And I think that some of us might have traumas, or some of us might have pain in the past that we might not have dealt with. That food is such a comfort. And that's why some people fail things like gastric sleeve or gastric bypass, because now their security blanket is gone. Now, and it's so traumatic to now physically be so restrained in order to not be able to eat their favorite food. So that was a major trigger for me. And then that put me into this cycle of doing all of these things that you would see on Instagram or TikTok and you think are right for you. Like if I just exercise more or restrict myself more, and then further damaging my metabolism to the point where nothing was working and I couldn't recognize myself anymore. So I needed something that was permanent. And for me, that was genetic weight loss.
Oh, that's lovely. And first of all, I'm so sorry about the loss of your brother.
Thank you.
And I can relate, because when you're going through such a strong emotion, food is the most easiest comfort.
Yes.
And it tastes so good, right?
It does.
It is. And I remember when I first moved from Toronto to Montreal,
Yeah.
and my binge eating had spiked to like a whole different level. But it was also the first time I moved away from home. So loneliness, and people don't factor that in. They don't factor loneliness, not having a connection, coming in as that strong desire to eat. So I can relate in so many ways. There's something you touched on as far as the gastric sleeve and gastric bypass. I'm sure you have clients, I have clients as well that have done it, gained all the weight back from it as well. But I want to talk about what all of that has an impact on metabolism. And, because we hear this terminology, metabolic adaptation and things of that sort. So what's happening there, and what, for someone that could have gone through a gastric bypass or gone through a balloon, I don't know if that's familiar in Toronto, but we do have the balloon here. What happens to their metabolism?
Yeah, so it's more so it actually slows down because they're not eating as much food as they were previously, and really not eating much food at all. But the issue then becomes, now that your metabolism has completely slowed down, if you're not doing things like eating protein regularly or eating in a fashion that will keep your metabolism where it needs to be, when it slows down because you're just eating much less, but then you're eating foods that can kind of slip past the restriction. So for example, if you were to take a cracker or a cookie and mish it with water, you can actually shove a lot of cookies in a little thing if you mix it with water. So once you start eating calorically all of these foods that can kind of fill up your pouch, you start to slowly stretch out your pouch and stretch out your stomach. And that's when you get into a problem, because now your metabolism has slowed down because you're not eating as much, but then now you're eating more and more, and you're actually eating back to what you're used to. So the weight just starts to pile back on. So again, you need to understand why you gained that weight in the first place, and then deal with it at the root cause. Because in a sense, it almost is a Band-Aid approach. Because in medicine, that's the gold standard still. It's the gastric sleeve or bypass. Not necessarily the balloon, but bypass is still seen as the gold standard, because there hasn't been something from a medical standpoint that they've discovered that can help. So hoping more research comes into genetic weight loss, because this is something that is really going to help people understand themselves. And I wonder, is maybe there a fear of understanding ourselves? Is that scary for people?
I would say so. I mean, I have friends of mine and I asked them, have you been to the doctor or have you, they're like, no, no.
I don't want to know.
I don't want to know. And I'm pretty fine. I mean, why even go further away? My partner, if I tell him you need to go do your tests, like you need to go in, and he's like, I'm fine. I did a test 2 years ago. I'm like, no, we need to go, just make sure everything's okay. So I think there is. I've seen it around my friends. So possibly of just knowing, even if there's something in the family, I don't want to know, just kind of shove it under the rug, then I don't have to deal with it, right?
Yeah.
So I think this is why what you're doing is so beneficial, because now it's bringing a light to what people probably should pull up the rug and say, yeah, because if prevention is better than cure.
100%.
Right? So the faster they get to see it, the better you'll be able to help them, the better they'll be able to, because there is such a thing, and correct me if I'm wrong, as too late.
There is. And that's the hard part with doing genetic weight loss, because it gets to a point where we can't necessarily switch off those disease genes, or you already have the full-blown gene where we're just trying to, even with things like fatty liver disease, right? I've had some clients and patients come to me younger and younger, 17, 16, 15. Oh, doc, I just have fatty liver disease. Fatty liver disease, when those fat deposits in your liver harden, it can become cirrhotic. It can come to the point where you have to get a liver transplant, where you might get liver cancer. So yeah, then it's too late. And I think oftentimes we progress so much in terms of medicine where we do think every single disease process is reversible, and it's simply not true, and it's not the case.
Absolutely. Something I want to pick on is because you're on vacation here in Dubai, is flexible dieting.
Yes.
Right? Because I believe this is that fear as well of, oh my God, if it's genetic, it's going to be all raw food, and I can just sense that.
Yep.
And I really want to, break that, because I'm sure there's people out there thinking, oh, is this for me, or could this work? So what is your take on flexible dieting? Especially here, you're on vacation, right? Still maintaining your weight loss, looking gorgeous.
Oh, thank you.
What's your take on it, and how can that be incorporated in with genes and weight loss?
It has to be. This is the story of you. So you are just eating in a way that honors your body. We have one body. You should be honoring your body all the time. So, for example, if I was someone who was histamine intolerant, I wouldn't necessarily drink alcohol every single day that I've been on vacation. But you can prepare by taking things like DAO, something that will help break down the histamine. So it's that kind of understanding of what your triggers are and how to avoid them, and then just how to minimize them. So I've eaten pretty much everything that I've wanted to eat while on vacation. I don't restrict, because I've had that history of binge eating in the past, but I also understand my genetics very well. So I understand if I am getting to a point now, I am on vacation, am I just eating because this is going to give me a dopamine rush, or I'm eating because I actually enjoy this food, I enjoy the company, it's something that I want to eat and enjoy and indulge in. It is, I will have to say, it is tricky sometimes being around other people, because we are mirrors of each other sometimes. So if I'm on vacation and I'm just eating a couple bites and then someone else is overeating, they might look to me and say, what? How come you're done eating already? Eat more, eat more. Yeah. That's what, we've met up with friends here. And that's kind of something that I struggled with this past week, where it's like, oh my gosh, eat more. And, my friends are amazingly in shape, but sometimes when people are not in shape, it makes them feel like, well, if she's eating less, do I need to eat less? Or, so really understanding that that's more of a reflection of that person. Yeah. But eating to enjoyment, understanding your genetics, understanding if it's a real craving or if you really just want to enjoy the food, but also just taking that time, being mindful, enjoying it, and not eating like out of scarcity, right? Like, I might not ever eat this food again. No, the food's always there. It's always accessible to you. That takes away that level of panic.
Absolutely. I always say, tell yourself that you can fit it in, and it'll be okay. The minute you say you cannot have it,
it's done. Yeah.
That's it. All you're thinking about, and it's like that stubborn child. It's like, no, you cannot have the lollipop. And they cry and they scream. But the minute you tell them, you can have a lollipop every day, then they turn around and say, I don't want it. Yeah, it's so interesting. What else? What else do we need to know about genes and weight loss? Anything that I have a lot of moms that are listening, a lot of busy women that are listening, a lot of high C-level executives that are listening that probably should be taking note and probably should be stepping back, because these women are go, 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 go. I need to drive the kids to school. I need to go from this work to this job to this job. I need to travel from here to here to here. What are some of the tips or important points that they need to start taking a step back and say, you need to check this with yourself right now. It's probably good to get your book or have, look at your genetics and see what needs to get brought to attention.
Yeah, there's only one you, right? We always hear that analogy that you got to put your mask on first on the plane, get your oxygen first before you help others. And I think starting this journey as a mom of young kids, I never sacrificed that time to work on myself because I knew I'd come back a better, stronger, happier mom, happier wife. And I think and in society we call it being selfish, but it's not. It is so necessary because, like we talked about, these things, even things like cancerous cells, these are things that at some point can be reversible before it gets to that point. So you actually owe it to yourself and the people that you are around, your children, your family, your colleagues, to invest that time. And so not waiting for it to be reactive, but preventive. I had a client and she was like, just even talking about the investment in terms of being preventative, we're more used to, she said, if my front tooth were to chip, I'd pay $5,000 to get it fixed. And so why would I not invest that kind of money for my entire body or to prevent any type of future disease? So really switching your mindset to be more preventative. And understanding that we as women, we are kind of guiding our children in the sense of they see what we're doing. So we really do want to give them that right example in terms of what it looks like to take care of ourselves. And, burnout is a real thing. We know that as entrepreneurs. There is no race. I think we just keep pushing and pushing and pushing ourselves. And it's like, what is this all for? We already have a lot of the lives that we have been, this is it. This is the life that we've been striving and earning for. So slow down, enjoy it, but also make sure that you're healthy along the way. So definitely grab my book at geneticweightlossbook.com. And it's going to give you information in terms of how to get started, what genetic avatar you might be. Stop taking a million different supplements. These all interact, and there's so many different dosages. Don't blindly take a bunch of supplements, but understand the benefits of targeted supplementation, because the food that as I mentioned, the soil our food is grown in is not the same soil we had years ago. So unfortunately, food is not the medicine that we need it to be. We do need some type of targeted supplementation, but make sure you're doing it wisely. Make sure you're understanding that how this can interact. I think those are the main tips I would say.
If you were to recommend 3 of your top 3 supplements that someone should be taking by hook or by crook, what would your 3 best ones be?
I would have to say lean support. We have a supplement that it helps in the sense of getting rid of a lot of cravings. That's the number one thing women struggle with, is I can't just stop craving. So lean support is a stack that's very helpful in terms of just getting that ball rolling and getting rid of your cravings so that you can commit to a healthy eating plan. And then another supplement that I would actually recommend is our Mind Thrive. And so this contains magnesium that we've talked about, but understanding that magnesium needs to also cross the blood-brain barrier. And so this actually helps with things like your cognition, helps you feel more alert. Because again, if you're not feeling alert, you might be more prone to just having that high sugar latte so that you can stay awake and get things done during the day. And then the third supplement that I would recommend would definitely be our Rebalance. I take that at night. That helps me kind of calm down, go to sleep, lower my cortisol levels. It does have ashwagandha in it, and that is a great medication as a mom that I would recommend to take at night, and that has really helped to keep the weight off as well.
Oh, that's lovely. I mean, ashwagandha is my
So good.
my saving grace. I wish I had started taking it sooner. That's my biggest regret.
Yes.
My biggest regret is not taking it sooner, but I was skeptical about it because there's. And I would actually, before we wrap up, I need your take on this, because there was so much conversation around it increasing male testosterone in the body. And then I went to my doctor and she's like, Natasha, no. Take it, please. You struggle, you're high functioning anxiety, take it. It's going to be the best game changer, absolute game changer. What's your take on all of that buzzword?
It's a game changer, 100%. My only concern with ashwagandha is that it does have increased risk for miscarriage. So if you are, expecting, definitely stop taking that medication. But other than that, it's a great supplement.
Oh, lovely. Dr. Phyllis, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. You've shed so much light today on an area of weight loss that I don't think a lot of women are taking into account, men for that matter as well, right? And thank you. Thank you for coming all the way from Toronto. I know you didn't come for me, but thank you
It
for
worked out
coming
perfectly.
and taking the time to really share that information with us. And if you could leave one piece of advice for the woman or man listening that's just looking for that ray of hope right now, what would your message be?
Never stop. Never stop fighting for that version of you. Even if you feel like you're drowning and you can't figure it out, don't stop, and don't do it alone. There is people just like me who've been there, who want to help you, who can guide you. And so don't ever stop trying. Start off with a genetic test and just take one baby step. The path will literally rise to meet you, and you'll be where you want to be before you know it.
That's amazing. Thank you so
You're
much.
welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us at Breaking the Cycle. If today's conversation resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, or share this episode with someone who really needs it. Remember, breaking free isn't about perfection, it's about progress. Keep showing up, keep doing the work, and trust that transformation is possible.